and physique. Welcome, everyone. This is Behavior Code. This is a new podcast where I'm interviewing very special graduates and alumni of the prestigious Messengers program by Arash Zepar Dibazar. You can find the link under this for arashzepar.com. That's where you find this guy. And I'm here joined with Bryan Casella for the second episode with him. This is episode number 4, but who's keeping track? One day in the future, there'll be so many. I doubt Joe Rogan is like, and this is episode 1872 at the beginning of each episode. I've never watched his podcast, but I know he has a lot of them. But I'm here with Bryan Casella. He's a real estate coach in Southern California, especially in Los Angeles, and he's doing very, very well with his team, managing and training and growing very successful real estate agents, as he himself went to the top very fast after a professional basketball career. And really, he's just an amazing person. And he is also an alumni of this Messengers training program with Arash Zepar Dibazar. So I'm just going to shoot the shit with him a little bit, pick his brain about his experiences, and, get some of his language about, this whole thing we're talking about. So, of course, me, Yogi Chris, PhD. I don't need an introduction, but I'd like to hand it over to Bryan. How you doing today, brother? And how is your day, especially after this last Messengers training that we just finished this last weekend?
Cool. Thank you, Chris, for the phenomenal introduction. Good day to you, sir. Things are booming on my end, man. It's been nothing but, forward progress and realizations and positivity and, all the things that we think about and focus on constantly. If I'm going to summarize 2 additional things, because our first episode was incredible, and I recommend people go to that one and watch it as well, because it was very, very good. And we went way longer too. I think we did like 40 minutes instead of like 20. It was great. 2 things, man, 2 things. And I mentioned this to Arash too. The first would be this, and these are big for me because I believe these cause a ripple effect in every area of your life. And that's the cool thing, I think, about everything Arash teaches, but Messengers more so than anything else, is what you learn and get, no matter where you come from into this group, you feel and see big effects right away. And that's tough to find in different places. Normally, if you get people together to go to an event who are from different walks of life and different careers, normally one genre or one type of person takes a lot more. But in this one, unanimously, everybody takes a lot, which is cool because you don't see that often. So I do want to comment on that. 2 major things. One would be my compassion for human beings has increased exponentially. I will admit that before I was very impatient with people at times. If somebody wasn't understanding something, I would almost judge them internally, like saying, "What's wrong with you, man? Like, are you dumb? Like, how do you not get this?" Right? Like a 10-year-old can get this. And the more I developed, the more I realized that's incorrect. Especially when we start achieving more success and we get in a leadership position, we amass more power, more influence. And I realized that when you become a figure to the outside, whether on a small or large scale, you have an increasing responsibility to help others. So having that missing piece as you ascend more and have that position becomes a fatal flaw, right? So that has improved tremendously and has helped me a lot, right? In my personal life, with my relationships, friendships, business partnerships, but also on the business side and overall, right? With everything that we do on social media. And here's a second one. And I don't think people have spotted this, but I have. If you look at the average human being nowadays, it seems like most people, virtually all of them, have some sort of vice, some sort of addiction, or some deep-rooted issue internally that they have an outward coping mechanism for. Case in point, somebody might be a little depressed and their comfort is food, right? Comfort food, they call it. Somebody has an impulsion to gamble. Somebody has an impulsion for, certain drugs or alcohol or something like that. And, the more I look at myself and the people in this group and Arash, the more I see we don't deal with that. And that's a deep-rooted issue with a lot of people in the majority of the population that I think we get, but it's become such a normal part of everyday existence for the average human being that that's almost put into this category that's like, okay, well, everybody's going to have that no matter what, and you can't handle that. But we don't seem to be affected by that. And when I look at my life and when I look at people, again, increasing in power, fame, and responsibility, you find out, because now they have all this attention and additional pressure, that they break. all these celebrities committing suicide, they're on drugs. We find out all this dirty stuff about them, pedophiles, all this stuff that they deal with that was always there, but now suddenly it got to a breaking point, or they received the fame and the attention that then exposed that. And when I look at my life and you guys and Arash and everybody else, we don't have that. And that to me is tremendous as far as when you look long-term, because that can be the downfall for you. You can create a huge empire and do a lot of good things, but that vice or that issue can literally crumble everything in the blink of an eye. And I really haven't heard anybody comment about that. But as you reminded me of the episode today, that immediately popped into my mind, because I've noticed in my life that's been one of the power cards that I have to say, well, 99.9% of people deal with this and I don't. So that gives me a leg up over someone else who's going to teach, but also as somebody who is giving a testimonial for the event, to say the event in particular has fueled that tremendously, because that's not even an issue to me. It's not even on my radar anymore. You know what I mean? Because someone else is an example, before I pass it back to you, they'll say, oh, well, if you have a vice, just replace it with running or reading. We're not even having those types of conversations, right? So that to me now becomes like kindergarten, and we're in 11th or 12th grade. And that's like, okay, that was light years ago. And now we've moved on to a different realm and stratosphere where that's for everybody else. And we're 20 steps ahead, if that makes sense.
You know, it makes a lot of sense, and I wouldn't have thought of it on my own. And I even had, you know, I smoke weed, and I had some like feelings come up as you were talking, but I got more clarity on what you were saying as you were saying it, and, or at least from my perspective. So I'm gathering a very similar opinion, which is like, for me, a lot of more awareness on when I am, definitely a distinction. Let me just say it like this. The distinction between the inside and what I am self-creating, and the outside and what's actually happening outside of me. And this distinction that keeps getting more and more clarified as I train with Arash. But this last Messengers, I mean, the Philosopher's Stone, it just stacked these philosophies. I mean, I've been reading my own notes on it. It's fucking dope. It's like 10 pages of type notes on these philosophies that come from famous philosophers of the Stoicism, of existentialism, some others. And you know, put together in an algorithm, you know, an order of one, then the next, and the next, and the next, that when you review it, or when you listen to the 10 hours, or you show up for the 10 hours of lecture, that it changes you. And I feel changed on a new level, because, and I know that because I have my past level to compare it to. And it's like, whoa, emotions were just as emotional, but now I'm like aware that let's say like the frantic, I might get like frantic sometimes. I don't know if you would know this about me as a yogi, but like I'll get a little kind of frantic when I'm trying to accomplish too many things like at the same time. And there's like a jitteriness to my movement that just comes up once or twice a day or something. And getting aware, I'm like seeing it before it happens, like as the jitter, and it's like immediately I recognize I am reacting to something in my imagination that isn't really happening. And you know, and this is the result of these teachings have raised my awareness to catch those moments, and how much saved time I'm going to accumulate the rest of my life from not indulging in those emotional movements so much, and how much you know, I'll probably even live longer because I won't be stressing myself out so much with those, you know. And that, what would you pay for 6 more months of life? I mean, it's not unrealistic, right? If you chunk it up. So that's super interesting. And it was really deep, man. I'm astounded, actually. You kind of blew me away with your response, because you use such basic language, but you touched on such a high altitude idea. And it's true. It's true. We're not asking like, hey, what do I do about this habit, or how do I replace this or that? And I mean, that's amazing. I mean, you took the wind right out of me. I don't even know what to say after that. Like,
I can add to it too, brother.
What's that?
I said I can add to it too if you'd like.
Please. What could you add to that?
Another thing as well is, you know, and this is directly paralleled with what I was talking about. When we have, let's say for us, many of us teach on here and in this program, and we have our own, you know, students and responsibilities and teams and relationships. When you look at a lot of the questions and objections that we get from people, right? Even in a sales situation or in a training situation, a lot of people come to us with, again, a surface level comment, issue, problem, challenge, whatever it is. And we, through conversation very quickly, and first we've done this with ourselves and our process with everything we've gotten, especially in the messengers event, but we can get to the real issue. So when someone gives me a question, it's almost like now when I hear that question or I read it via text, I see, if we're going to compare this to like one of those old video games where you're like digging or something and you're at the top, you can immediately, I can see 6 or 7 levels deeper. Or in the classic picture that we see of like that motivational thing, like, oh, the tip of the iceberg, right? And then they show you everything that's underneath the water. It's almost like I have access to see underneath the water to see, okay, this person on the surface is saying this, but the real issue is, boom, 20 levels deeper, which has something to do with the mind or a manifestation of what you just described, the imagination, pictures, or something like that. So we, in essence, have that tool, if we're going to name it that, to now not only use it on ourselves to live better, live cleaner, live happier, more efficiently, but we can now use that same tool in our hand now that we understand it and we got it through the messengers to assist other people. That's the cool part. And I think that, to me, is the biggest and greatest gift that anybody can give, because the deeper we get into this, we realize this thing is a lot bigger than us. You get what I'm saying? Our crew is powerful and it's small in comparison to the numbers in the world, but the tools and the abilities now with these individuals, I believe it's almost like comparing the 300 Spartans against the 200,000 in the Persian army and how they held them off for a couple days. And had they not found out about that secret path in the back, who knows how long they could have held them off with superior tactics and knowing something that the enemy didn't know. So that, again, gives you a very real life example of the potency of this. And until you're in it, it's, in a sense, sometimes I feel like words do it a disservice, because it's so powerful and it's really limitless. And we're just scratching the surface with the ability of it. Imagine what we're going to be able to do with these tools and abilities in another year or two, you know?
Yeah, well, and I want to ask, because, you know, there's an old technique of walking through words. When you hear someone say things like that or it or them or you know, things that are aggregate words, like, what is it? And, you know, you've been mentioning tools and you've been mentioning, you know, it, meaning like the messengers, the training, and, you know, how words do a disservice to it. Well, the question is going to be something like, well, what is it? Like, how do you describe the messengers to somebody? And being, you know, humbly approaching, you know, the sales guru of the century, maybe the millennium. How would you approach, you know, how would you introduce it to someone?
What I would say is this, especially for the people that are in my world specifically, because, you know, sales and the business world is typically very, if we're going to look at it through a, we can say personality type, it's very driver for the most part. It's very dry, very blunt, to the point, you know, very itemized, not too much fluff. And as far as the experience, right, it's just very, give me the information, let's go. This is what I say. If I can have somebody access their memory and ask them, you remember maybe, whether it was sales related or not, the first time you learned something and that moment where you realized, holy shit, like I never even knew about this and it was right in front of me, or holy shit, I now have this new technique I was not even aware of existed. And now they're thinking, shit, look at all these scenarios where I could have used it and how powerful of an advantage I have now. So I say, remember that exact moment, the feeling that you got, and then the future vision that you got as far as now what the opportunities are. So I say, remember that moment, now multiply that feeling times 1,000. That's what going to the messengers is like, and getting that information. And I would say that's the best way I can describe it to somebody directly, accessing their feelings, and for them to get a relevant, like, oh shit, okay, yeah, that's what you mean.
What do anybody in the audience, feel free to type any questions or comments. We're going to go about 5 or 10 more minutes. So let me get that straight, because I don't know, I think some of the things that you said, I'm going to need to go back and watch the recording. It kind of went over my head, but it sounded, what I took from it was, approach them as if they're drivers, find their emotion on it, like describe vividly an emotion that they can resonate with, and then basically say it's going to be 1,000 times greater than that.
Yeah, because you know, when I look at something like this, whenever we sell something like the messengers, which of course is very powerful, and when we look at the financials of it, the investment that somebody's going to put into this, it isn't like, going to the store and buying a coffee, unless we're specifically pitching this to a high level group of lawyers where money is no problem, right? Where they can just pull, go in their pants pocket and say, hey, which pocket do I have the $1 million in? I can't remember. Let me look, then it's a different conversation. But for most people, this is going to be a bigger or larger scale decision where they're going to think, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of money and my bank account maybe doesn't have that right now. And to me, selling in the business world, in a sense, and I gave this example because that's mostly the people that I deal with. I'm obviously going to pitch that slightly differently to different people because we know that in sales, you need to, understand the person in your audience. But when we go for the emotion, that's unanimously, we can say a universal language, right? Anger. Everybody on this knows what anger feels like. So if I said, remember the last time or picture the last time you were angry, maybe today, go back. And what happened? What manifested? Where did you feel it? Was it in your stomach, your heart? Where was it? Did you feel a sensation of heat rise up? What was it? Everybody would say, okay, yeah, I know what anger is if we started describing it. And that's why I go for that technique, because it's going to be readily accessible, easily accessible. And the main thing that I want to stamp that with as to why I go that route is what you mentioned earlier. When I teach or when I explain something to somebody, I do use very simple language, and I know that's a powerful technique in general, because everybody is going to increase their comprehension, or we can say duplicate. We talk about duplication, right? But that word is a little bit more advanced for some people, so I just say comprehension of the communication, because we can sell the shit out of the messengers, but if there isn't a comprehension on the opposite end, then that message would be wasted. And as a messenger, we never waste any messages.
Yeah, no message is a waste. Like the Bhagavad Gita says, no effort is ever wasted. And if I have the view in sight, then even the failures are part of the inevitable successes. So, of course, Sultan liked that one, I could tell. Anyway, I'm just teasing you, brother. So, yeah, because I would say something to the effect of, the language. Let me ask you if you could give me some feedback on basically how I would approach the subject with people. Not given, I would ask them something like, what's your experience with Arash Dibazar? People that haven't been exposed to Arash Dibazar, this is going to sound like, what's the $5,000 program? What's the $25,000 program? What's the $100,000 program? What is this? Who is this guy? Is this, Jordan Belfort is what, $100,000 for a day? What's Tony Robbins, like $1 million a day or $1 million an hour or something? What's the value transfer here? Who is this guy I haven't heard of? I've heard of Jordan Belfort. And this is a man with 5 beautiful girlfriends simultaneously that all know about each other, that some of them even live together, long-term relationships to short-term relationships. They don't talk to other guys. It's full compliance, and they're very intelligent. These aren't bimbos. And so you can't do, these aren't hookers. These are really, and very out there in the social media realm. So like you were saying, you would catch incongruencies. You would catch slip-ups. And it's not that they've never made mistakes. They're humans. You see them for being human and not for frauds or anything. So it's an amazing thing. And what does it take to have that sort of lifestyle, given that, the man is making whatever, he's a middle-class guy, kind of. Maybe upper middle class, but that's, in a family of 6, you should be, you know what I'm saying? Like a family of 6, that should be like, you know what I'm saying? So it's something, it's his communication, right? And to learn to communicate like that, it's not as simple as just like, an afternoon seminar or read a book on communication. It's your mind, and you have decades of mind in a different direction, learning to communicate the way that you've done, but it's gotten you the results that you've gotten. And if you want to change your results, change your communication, and then just allow some time to pass and watch the universe reorganize. But you're just going to be doing trial and error, trying to figure it out on your own. And with a lag effect, every few years, you're going to be able to check on how was your communication. So you're kind of blind, reaching in the dark for how you want to be. Yeah. It's why you need a mentor. But like, what do you want a mentor in? You want a guy that's going to help you make a lot of money? What are you going to end up spending that money on? What do you want that money for, guy? And, so what else are you going to do? Spirituality, I can tell you for sure that if you just go the spiritual route, you're going to be very frustrated with both money and relationships. And you're going to have to just kind of, pour water on that fire the rest of your life because it seems to keep spontaneously igniting itself. Or you can integrate it into a holistic kind of spiritual path. And this is, Arash Dibazar and what he's teaching in the Messengers. And So it's a very intense online training experience that is unlike any other. That, ton of testimonies. These guys, they're all great guys, authors, real estate guys, lumber, all sorts of different industries, and they'll tell you what kind of change they went through in just these amount of hours. So that's how I would like approach the subject. Let's say I first got on the phone call with somebody, they give me a chance to speak, and I would say all of that. What do you think about that?
It's good, man. And as you were describing it too, especially like Arash and his situation, how he's living, I'm like, dude, what you just described to 99.5% of the population, that's so out of their reality. They're going to be like, is this guy talking about a movie? Like, what the hell is this? So, you're looking at describing something that to the average person, I don't even think they have the reference points, a term that we use a lot to be like, oh, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. To them, it's like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So just like we were discussing before, even off camera, for somebody, I would say, whenever somebody comes in person, it seals the deal for sure, like 100%. And I've been saying that to people too. You got to get around the people that you want to learn from, right? And now we're talking about this mystical figure, Arash, to most people who maybe, again, haven't seen him in person yet. So there's a disconnect between the video and in person. And man, this is kind of like a final thing I would say. I would say, look, let's say you did spend the money. Let's say you spent the $5,000 and 25,000, and in your mind, you're like, okay, if I ask you the question, let's say you spent it, what would be like, even if you were to name something outrageous that it helped you achieve, that maybe in your mind, something you want to do, but it seems so far-fetched or near impossible to you, you're like, no way Arash can help me achieve that with this or with this level of information. So if somebody told me it was that, let's say it's to, I don't know, get a girl that they wanted, that they think they have no chance with. I'm like, okay, if you spent the money and then you knew you could get that eventually with the skills that you learned at the event, would you do it? Like if you spent the money and then you were like, okay, I have it, at that point, would you be like, it was worth it 100%? And that's where I would take it with some people, because I think you would have to literally, it's almost like they say in football, like the Hail Mary, and be like, dude, if you knew you could throw that Hail Mary pass and I could teach you how to throw it and you would win the championship, would you learn from me? And but that person has to be qualified, which is the main thing I wanted to tell you. This is something that qualified people need to do. And I think this isn't for most people, dude. It is for a select few. Just like I said in the first one, as we're speaking, if something is ringing that bell in your mind and your attention is very focused and narrowed in on this conversation, then you, my friend, have that seed that needs to be watered and needs to sprout. And this is something for you. Now, if somebody's listening to this and saying, who the fuck is this bald guy and this other guy in a green shirt sitting here talking with a cat meowing in the background, then I'm going to say, okay, this isn't for you.
That's dope.
And we know, because even if the person is a little hesitant, they have that little voice inside saying, this sounds like something I'd want to do, or, I'm kind of interested, right? That to me is enough to tell somebody, go for it. Because when I look back at some of my biggest moments, it's because I had that little spark or that little voice saying, do it. And even though it seemed like I couldn't do it, I just committed and I did it, and I made the decision fast. And, the rest is history.
Wow. This was incredible. Thank you so much for giving us all your time, Bryan. And we'll definitely have you back maybe later. Next time we got you on rotation, sort of. And
sure.
If you guys are watching this on YouTube, iTunes, Facebook, even wherever you're catching this, leave a comment. Let us know how you think it. Let me know what you thought about it. Any suggestions for the future, and contact me on any of the platforms. You'll see the link below if you're interested in attending the Messengers. So to all, have a good night. Namaste.
All right, later, brother.